March 4th. God's presence is the only essential ingredient in worship. Myles Munroe. God created us to live in His presence. He planted a garden for Adam and Eve, a place where He could meet with them face to face. Genesis 3:8 alludes to this intimate relationship beautifully. The man and the woman heard the sound of the Lord God as He was walking in the garden in the cool of the day. God had placed man in the environment most suited for him, namely, God's presence. And it was that environment of God's presence that was lost when man fell. It was a situation that was unacceptable to God. Perhaps the whole history of God's interactions with mankind may be said to be the desire to restore us to His presence. Fast forward to about 2,500 years later. God speaks to Moses, the leader of His newly liberated people, and commands him in Exodus 25:8, "Have them make a sanctuary for me, and I will dwell among them." The tabernacle and temple that followed were God's plan to restore some measure of His presence among the people He had chosen. What does this tell us? God's plan to dwell among His people was to have them build a place of worship. Therefore, the key to restoring the environment of God's presence is worship. Myles Munroe writes, God's presence is the only essential ingredient in worship. Our praise and the other elements of our meetings must lead us into the presence of God. If they don't, there is no reason to do them. Oh yes, they may be nice and may make us feel good, but the purpose of the gathering is to enter the presence of the Lord. Anything that does not contribute to this is simply unnecessary clutter. God's presence in our presence is the only worthwhile end to our meetings. And what He says about church meetings is equally true of our private times of worship as well. They are futile without God's presence. May our primary, no, only aim when we worship be to enter into His presence. It is the environment that we were created for. Today's prayer. Lord, may Your presence be the essential ingredient in my worship.